Welcome back. So, the story goes that in a smoke filled office, some of the most important figures and producers in the music industry came together with representatives of dark shadow figures who wanted to decrease the frequency and vibration of the general population. To these shadow figures, this put human consciousness in danger of awakening to them being more divine frequencies. And if that happened, they would no longer have the power over the masses. This shadow entity had already made changes to music in the past, and for a while it seemed to be working. But now, somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s, it was getting out of hand again. Something had to be done. Welcome to the Occult and the Apocalypse with Kristen, aka Fire Terra Mama, where I tell you how they took what was once widely known about God, spirituality, and you, and how they took that and locked it away. Come with me while I show you what I've learned from science and religion, cultural beliefs, and mythology to turn the occult and the apocalypse into just the hidden and the revealed. Everything is sound, frequency, and vibration. This isn't just suspicious or woo-woo thinking. It's something that some of the greatest minds ever has told you. According to Nikola Tesla, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. Now, interestingly, Tesla was one of the greatest minds ever known, and he died penniless, and all of his research, documents, and inventions were confiscated by the FBI upon his death. And even more interesting, they contacted John Trump, MIT engineer and uncle to none other than our current sitting president. Now, they wanted Mr. Trump to determine, supposedly, if any of the things that they found were dangerous, if it fell into the wrong hands. It said that Trump told them there was nothing dangerous, yet it all disappeared, probably under classification. Now, scientifically, here are the facts. Everything is energy. All energy vibrates. Physical matter is energy slowed down enough to perceive it. Even still, lifeless objects are imperceptibly vibrating. This is evidenced by experiments like using vibrations to shatter glass. Now, in short, the glass experiment, which is noted that when sound waves that create vibrations that match the frequency, the resonating frequency of the glass, the two play off of each other and the glass molecules become excited and start to vibrate more. Now, these vibrations can be perceived on a slow motion camera. The glass can be seen undulating slightly. Once a matched resonance is made, as the intensity increases, the rate the glass needs to vibrate or excite at also increases and stretches beyond the material capacity to do so and breaks. On a grander scale, the whole universe is vibrating, and there are many scientists who believe that not only everything that exists perceptible but also imperceptible is vibrating. And this is because everything, even you, is made of energy, and all energy vibrates. And much like vibrations affect glass, vibrations can affect everything, including you. It's been proven by the FBI and CIA Freedom of Information Act releases that sound, frequency, and vibration have been studied. And it's also shown in these documents that sound and vibration as a control mechanism or a weapon have been planned, built, and used. Even looking into ancient religious texts, we see sound and vibration as tools of destruction and creation itself. So, frequency and vibration, therefore sound, will have a direct impact on the physical material world. And you know what else can? Words. You'll often hear people tell you that your words have meaning and that writing or saying words is called spelling. Is it true in a literal way? I don't have proof per se, but your words, whether good or negative, impact the people and the world around you. Have you ever walked into a room where there was an argument that had just occurred? You'll probably say that you could cut the tension with a knife. It's like the frequency of the room is thicker. Now, another good example is an experiment that you can try at home. People have been doing it around the world and sharing it on social media, which technically makes it a peer-reviewed, duplicated study. You cook 3 cups of rice. Store 1 cup in 3 individual airtight containers and label them. Control. This jar you put in the fridge, you do nothing with it, you let it sit with your regular food. Love. This jar you spend 1 to 5 minutes every day. You say compliments, kind words, encouragement, play upbeat music, and give this one attention. The third jar is hate. You spend 1 to 5 minutes every day saying hateful things, playing angry or violent music, and or spending less time with the hate rice than you do with the love rice, creating an atmosphere of anger and aggressiveness. The results duplicated over and over again. The control rice goes bad at a regular rate. The hate rice seems to decay faster and have more issues like drying out or getting awful looking mold, and it looks more toxically charged. And the love rice, it stays good longer and typically doesn't develop the mold or the dryness, and it seems to slow down the decay process. The likely reason? The vibrations of the words and the frequency the rice absorbs. Put the words and the sound together, and what do you have? You have music. Something that you probably consume in some way every single day. So before I tell you how changes were made to music that may have changed the human mindset, take a second to think about what kind of music you consume. Now, music was first standardized around 500 CE with the Catholic Church and the Gregorian chant. It allowed for music to be written notation rather than orally taught. Now, as the first conspiracy theory goes, one of the most important changes were that was supposedly intended to cause harm to the human spirit was a standardization of tuning instruments to from 432 hertz, what's considered a preferred frequency, to 440 hertz. Now, according to the theory, when this happened around 1955, it negatively affected the human body and human consciousness. Now, the truth is a little less clear. In some ways, the standardization did have an effect on people, but prior to the standardization, different regions had different frequencies that their instruments were tuned to, ranging from 377 to 520. However, what immediately gets my attention regarding this theory is how far media outlets have gone to debunk the story altogether. So much so that Reuters, a reputable news source, did a fact check in August 2021. It was most recently debunked in October 2025 by an online magazine, IFL Science. The primary basis for refuting this theory isn't exactly that the change didn't cause harm, but that there's no scientific data to prove that the universe or people prefer 432 hertz. However, a study published in the National Library of Medicine in 2019 titled Music Tuned to 440 Hertz versus 432 Hertz and Health Effects. It was a double-blind crossover pilot study and did generate some interesting findings. The study was published 2 years before the Reuters debunk. Per the context of the paper published by Diletta Camicile, it says, quote, the current reference frequency for tuning musical instruments is 440 hertz. Some theorists and musicians claim that 432 hertz tuning has better effects to the human body, but there are no scientific studies that support this hypothesis, unquote. So according to the abstract of this study, the results noted a decrease in mean blood pressure values and a marked decrease in mean heart rate and a slight decrease in respiratory rate when listening to music tuned to 432 hertz. Subjects also reported being more focused about listening to the music and more satisfied after the sessions when they listened to music that was tuned to 432 hertz. The conclusions were that 432 hertz music can reduce heart rate and the cardiovascular system more than music tuned to 440 hertz. The recommendation was to repeat the experiment with the bigger sample size and increase the clinical parameters that are covered. We do know for certain that ancient cultures and even some modern day religions use sound as a healing mechanism and a way to commune with the divine. But that standardization happened in the 50s, and when I started, I told you that the big change happened somewhere between the end of the 1980s and the beginning of the 90s. Now, prior to the 1950s, music was mostly composed without words. Most music with words were religious in nature or part of the 1920s and 1930s jazz and bluegrass style musics. Now, in 1947, the transistor radio was developed, pulling people from their shared large sets and giving them handheld personal devices. As swing and big band were on the way out, by the 50s, the big crooners were on the scene. Now, the top Billboard songs of the 50s, of 1950, had Nat King Cole, the Andrews Sisters, Perry Como, and Bing Crosby, just to name a few. Lyrics to songs at the time had the full range of human emotions, with lyrics from Bing like, there's a place I'd like to go, and it's back in Idaho where your friendly neighbors smile and say hello. And the Andrews Sisters singing, I'm aware my heart is a sad affair. There's so much disillusion there, but I can dream it, can't I? Can't I adore you even though we're oceans apart? And of course, anyone with the ability to perceive sound knows that the lyrics of music can absolutely affect your feelings. The happier tunes evoke happy feelings, and the sadder tunes can tap into a well of sad thoughts and feelings of their own. Now, all this was before the decision to tune musicians to 440 hertz. Now, 10 years later, just 5 years after the change, we see a lot of life happening into the residents of Earth. We have the Korean War, the space race, the arms race, the beginning of the Vietnam War, Middle East upheaval, and the golden age of TV, which resulted in mass consumerism. We also saw the civil rights movement and the establishment of the Peace Corps, and a lot more. In 1959, later billed as the day the music died, we saw the loss of Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper on a plane crash. But the end of the year top 100 in 1960 included songs like Running Bear, which was about forbidden love, It's Now or Never by Elvis. It also saw Chubby Checkers, The Twist, and Bobby Darin's Beyond the Sea. A lot of feel good music, but still covering the range of emotions. In the 60s and 70s, music was often used as a reactionary platform to social situations and the world and the things going on within it. In the 70s, hip hop started to develop in the Bronx. It was born out of music styles such as jazz, disco, funk, R&B, and soul. But before we tackle what was different in the next couple of decades, let's talk about what stayed the same. Much like the seedy underbelly of Hollywood, being a musician is not an easy lifestyle, particularly then. In the 40s and 50s and 60s, musicians would vary themselves in groups from one small venue to another. They played in clubs that were often owned and operated by organized crime groups, and they took uppers and downers while drinking large amounts of alcohol just to function. They cheated on their spouses, they threw wild parties, and kept each other's secrets. Many of them, in fact, were either caught with or married underage children, 13 and 14-year-old girls. I guess from that sad perspective, it's easy to see how people trying to become famous could get easily wrapped up with criminals looking to leverage information against them to cause them pain. And also, not much has changed, unfortunately. Of course, when Jerry Lee Lewis married his 13-year-old cousin, it ruined a European tour, and his music career, although still intact, never quite recovered to its full potential. Maybe that's why they got better at hiding what they were doing. Now, when you look at lyrics between 1950 and 1980, you can almost see a back and forth play between temptation and virtue. Carnal wants versus spiritual needs. For every song that outlined a bad emotion or behavior, there could be two or three to inspire love or joy or loyalty. And of course, there were also those within the music industry wanting to keep the social norms or maintain the status quo, and generally normalizing what should never have been normal at all. I'm drawn specifically to lyrics like 1968's Time of the Season, which appears at a minimum sickly suggestive at best. The whole song consists of these lyrics. It's the time of the season when love runs high. In this time, give it to me easy, and let me try with pleasured hands to take you in the sun to promised lands, to show you everyone. It's the time for the season of loving. What's your name? Who's your daddy? Is he rich? Is he rich like me? Has he taken any time to show you what you need to live? Tell it to me slowly. Tell you what I really want to know. It's the time for the season of loving. Now, knowing what we know now of some of the major players in some of today's biggest scandals and the fact that they've been shaping the entertainment industry from end to end for several decades, secretly doing dark work in the dark, lyrics like that just land differently now. Honestly, I've always been a little uncomfortable with that song. Discernment, friends. That feeling, that's discernment. As music pushed against the social norms and revolutionized how people saw each other and themselves, something really interesting happened. Music seemed to organically shift in a direction that fostered self love, love for the multitudes, caring about others, saving humanity, and many more topics that, in my theory at least, could have shifted the collective consciousness closer to awakening. From 1980 to 1987, we saw just in the annual Billboard Top 100 songs that promoted self love, love of others, while continuing to urge a critical eye towards the way that the system and some people were. Songs like It's Still Rock and Roll to Me, where Billy Joel taught you about consumerism. And John Lennon, Watching the Wheels, was his way of saying he was happy when he exited the system as it was. And America's You Can Do Magic, which is supposed to be a love song, but it really talks about your power to manifest. And then there's Journey's Don't Stop Believing. We had songs highlighting the truth about some people, like Every Breath You Take and Sweet Dreams Were Made of This. And Prince's 1999 told of a coming judgment day. And When Doves Cry talked about doing the inner work and recognizing the parts of yourself that needed to heal. Rockwell's Somebody's Watching Me shows that no matter where you go, someone is going to be keeping track of what you're doing. Usually, jealousy is the driver there. USA for Africa sang We Are the World, and we got That's What Friends Are For. And Whitney told us that self-love was the best love and to teach it to our children in the greatest love of all. The Glory of Love told you about the melancholy truth of genuine love. And Jefferson Starship told you nothing's going to stop us now, which always kind of makes me think of Jesus' faith as a mustard seed. By 1988, we start to see mainstream music become a bit more bold. We see a mix of music, but the more positive songs like Man in the Mirror, a song about looking at yourself and being the change in the world, had to compete with songs that were sexualized and predatory in nature. What was once innuendo becomes clearly indicated in songs like Pour Some Sugar on Me or Father Figure. And then the next few years, we hear My Prerogative and Cold Hearted and Every Little Step. Sure, there were still songs about the power of love, but Tone Loc gave you Funky Cold Medina, a song about drugging women to sleep with him, and Wild Thing, with lyrics like, Saw this luscious little frame, ain't lying, fellas, she was fine. Sweet young miss come gave me a kiss, and I knew that she was mine, where he takes this girl into his limo. Now, this is where hip hop really broke into mainstream, and in 1990, we saw songs like Wilson Phillips' Hold On up against Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison, disparaging women, and Do Me, whose lyrics read, Backstage, underage, adolescent, how you doing? Fine, she replied. I sighed. I like to do the wild thing. Action took place. And this was a song that outranked This One's for the Children by New Kids in the top 100 of that year. And we're not talking by a few spots. We're talking more than 70 spots below. And Prince, who used to sing a lot of his music to represent his spiritual beliefs and metaphorically reveal the dark underbelly of the entertainment industry, ranked dead last with Thieves in the Temple. Now, we see music kind of shift back and forth from 1990 to 1993. Songs in the top 5 in these years were I Wanna Sex You Up and Baby's Got Back and Freak Me by Silk. Much further down on the charts were songs like We Didn't Start the Fire, Billy Joel's way of pointing out how social structure is connected, and Mr. Wendell teaching you about the unique value of human life. and Prince's Seven, a detailed description of the book of Revelation disguised as a love song. Two of these songs charted in the same year. Some years didn't really have any songs to note. Sure, there were songs to note, love songs and chasing love songs, but most of it is about toxic love. And yeah, there were self empowerment songs, but encouraging men and women to act recklessly or on instinct alone, and not necessarily from a place of love or true love for others. Now, in 1992, Michael Jackson released Heal the World with lyrics like, "Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race." A song that would have topped the charts just a few years before didn't chart in 1992 when it was released late in the year, or in 1993 when it would have gotten the most play. You know what did happen in 1993? Michael Jackson got maliciously, incorrectly, and intentionally accused of crimes against children. It was recanted later, and the family in question even reported that they were paid to say these things. But Michael, who stayed in the spotlight but got further and further away and became more and more reclusive, never fully recovered. Now, recent Epstein file releases confirm that Michael was not part of their club. He was trying to help children. Now, the music continues to go downhill from here, and people like Diddy begin to gain more and more notoriety and fame. And all of this is happening while poor communities, particularly ones of color, are being infiltrated by a CIA fueled crack epidemic, poisoning the health and minds and spiritual connections for decades to come. Now, none of these songs are inherently good or bad themselves. In fact, I listen to some degree to most of them. But some of them I will intentionally listen to, and others are more like hanging out in my playlist as like a sign or representation of a passing mood, not a state of mind. So, this whistleblower that we started with, whose story first surfaced to my attention right around the same time that Diddy was getting arrested and sandwiched between major pieces of news like the Epstein scandal and Diddy's fall and stories popping up about Micah Miller, I think that it may have fallen to the wayside. It might be worth a Freedom of Information Act request someday, but I'll wait for a more transparent administration. But I would say that the shift in human consciousness and behaviors over the decades followed certainly could have been part of the fallout of that shift. Because you've heard you are what you eat, but I'd argue it's actually you are what you consume. The same way what you eat affects your health, what you watch, listen to, and experience affects your mindset. Now, Tesla said the universe is sound, frequency, and vibration. And when a sound matches the frequency of an inanimate object, the particles respond. Rice spoils if you're mean to it. So, what do you think happens to you if you fully immerse yourself into music portraying anger or hate or topics that reflect social and spiritual illness? Now, I was at an appointment with my massage therapist the other day and discussing this week's episode, and she reminded me that there was a study that at a certain point in life, people stop adding new music to their life. And that made sense to me at the time because a lot of my music is old and from my youth. And the study found that by the age of 33, people, quote, are who they're going to be, and you're less likely to keep listening, finding, and liking new music. But I think back to when I was 33 and can see how much my taste has changed, grown, or progressed since then. My early 30s were a mixture of country and rap and pop. But since working on a healing journey, I realized that I had a lot of music that I was listening to that was actually impressed upon me by other people in my life that were no longer part of my life. Now, after a glitch wiped out my playlist when I was 40, I've spent the last 3 years rebuilding my whole playlist, and it looks radically different than it did back then. I found old songs I forgot that I resonated with, and even some new ones along the way. So, what's on my playlist? In addition to many or most of the songs that I've mentioned, you'll find things like Bill Withers' Ain't No Sunshine, a lot of Alanis Morissette's Jagged Pill songs, At All Costs from the movie Wish, Bad for Me by Meghan Trainor, Blackbird by the Beatles, Dishwalla's Counting Blue Cars, Darkest Places by Abstract, that's actually a big favorite, and Bobby McFerrin's Don't Worry, Be Happy. Shannon Blake's Energy Vampires puts me in a positive mood, and just about anything, and I mean anything, by Jason Mraz. It reflects my spiritual beliefs most closely, I'd say. Like Look for the Good or Have It All or I Won't Give Up. And Everything is Sound, which listening to the song gave me the inspiration to tackle this topic this week. Of course, you'll find John Lennon's Imagine, and Dax is in there with a few, God's Eyes and Joker. And Disney reminds me to be kind with a song called Life is Sweeter, and Tupac tells me that life goes on. And of course, Peachka's Manifestations and her new song Fertilizer, which is just absolutely amazing. And Call Me Al is my little signal from the divine. I also have Baby Tate's I Am and a lot, like a lot more. I could go on, but it's not all love and light. And that's the point, to find a balance and attract a balance of energy into your life. If you don't attract a balance of energy into your life, you could over tip the scales. Things you won't find: R. Kelly, Diddy, and anyone that I know for sure is not going to resonate with me at a vibration that I personally want or need to maintain. Now, another thing Crystal, my massage therapist, did was she let me borrow her tuning forks, which are tuned to the frequencies of the chakras. So I'm going to play these sounds for you. I don't know how loud it's going to be with the microphone, so just adjust your volume as needed. And I encourage you to close your eyes and let yourself feel what you feel and note where you feel them. Now, the first is the root chakra, and it's tuned to 194.18. Next is the sacral chakra, and it's tuned to 210.42. This yellow is the solar plexus, and it's tuned to 126.22. The next one is the heart chakra, and it's tuned to 136.10. Next is the throat chakra, and it is tuned to 141.27. We have the third eye next, and that is tuned to 221.23. And our last chakra is the crown. And this is tuned to 172.06. There's one more. Now, this last one is labeled Soul's Purpose, and it is tuned to 272.2 hertz. And now, if you've been with me for a while, you'll know that I've done a podcast on 27 and 72. So I am going to link that episode. So, did some dark underbelly organization change music in ways that would negatively affect the human collective consciousness? I have no exact tangible evidence to prove that it happened, but I can say that it's worth putting in a Freedom of Information Act request. And right around the time that this whistleblower claims that this meeting occurred, there does seem to be a marked change in music that was being promoted and the messages behind it. Looking at independent artists who have been found in more unconventional ways, like social media, many of them, like Dermot Kennedy's Outnumbered, don't reflect those same values. Now, Dermot Kennedy was singing on street corners, and one Spotify upload changed and launched his career. The people making it around the official system of producer and production, they're singing about entirely different things than what you're hearing about on the radio. And knowing how music affects mindset and how much the powers that do exist in the world that want to disconnect you from God want to disconnect you from the divine, I wouldn't rule it out. But I'll leave that for you to think about. Join me in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about Baal. Who is Baal? Where did he come from? And does he have any power or followers now? In the meantime, thank you for helping me take the occult and the apocalypse into just the hidden and the revealed. I'll see you in a couple weeks.